If I say the Jesus prayer quietly while walking around my neighborhood and across a park, does the prayer affect the people around me in addition to just affecting me? It's a good question. I appreciate that question. I'll tell you a story about, I think he's pretty famous in the West. He came to Greece in Athens. He was a well-known so-called magician. His name just escaped me. He's very, very internationally well-known. He would do his show all over the world. This was like 25, 30 years ago at least. But I can't remember his name right now. Anyway, he came, and it was a big deal, like in Greece back in like probably the early 90s. It was a big deal, like first time they've ever had anything like that, and on national television in Athens at a big stadium or something. And he's doing all his magic tricks. This was told to me by an Athonite elder. He said that there were Christians there who went particularly to do the Jesus prayer. And they had, I guess there was another occasion where nobody was using Jesus prayer, and somebody said, why does God allow this? And the elder said that because no one is praying at these events. There's nobody praying. And so there was at this occasion somebody praying. And there were a number of people praying the Jesus prayer, apparently. And the magician had a very terrible night on that night. This was told to me. And the point was that when people pray, God can intervene. God is waiting for our participation, our desire, our invocation and entreaty, our synergy. And when we respond, then he is, as it were, free to act. In other words, on our behalf and for the sake of our salvation. Another example that comes to mind is in the mission field. This is not exactly what you're asking, but shows you the impact on the negative side when there's not sufficient prayer or Orthodox prayer or the presence of God. So there was, it's in the life, actually I can read it to you because we have it right here. Hang on. This is from our book, Apostle to Zaire. All right, so this is from Uncommon Press. And you go back, this is one of my favorite books in the whole world. So if you haven't read it, you need to go get it. Buy it right now, read it. You'll be extremely edified. And this is from the missionary field in Africa. Let me see if I can find it here. The story is that there was a Roman Catholic missionary, and he was doing mission near to the Orthodox, and he was not having a lot of success. And there were magicians who were countering his work, because in Africa, in that part of Africa especially, they have black magic and white magic, and both of them serve the devil, of course, and people are enslaved to these things. It's the only thing they knew for generation upon generation. And both of them are powerless before the Orthodox priest. But when people give rites and they think that the so-called white magic is going to save them from the black magic, well, this is an endless cycle of demonic possession and demonic, domination. Listen, here it is. I found it. Father Joseph from Lulumbashi told us of a phenomenal and tragic incident which happened in Kinshasa, the capital of Congo. That's where there's a big Orthodox presence. When he was living in the capital, which also was his birthplace, there occurred an incident at a church of Roman Catholics. At that time, he and his parents and sisters and brothers were all Roman Catholics. We would call them papal Protestants in the Orthodox. That's what I call them. The one responsible for this church was a priest who had come from Belgium to work in the mission field in Zaire. It's now called Congo. With this personal zeal, he had managed to lead many Africans into his church. Across the street from his church, however, a witch doctor had set up his headquarters. Each evening at the very same time that the Roman Catholic priest held his services, the sorcerer sounded his bongo, gathered people around and performed his magic ceremonies. He would lay out his wooden idols to dance, the people would sing, and in general create a lot of noise and commotion and upset the commendable efforts of the Roman Catholic priest. He suggested another time for the magician to call his followers, but he would hear nothing of it. He asked them to not make so much noise, but once again, they were unmoved. Thus, the priest was forced one day to go to the demonic gathering in person. Somewhat angry and irritated, he grabbed for the wooden idols in order to toss them into the trash. But what befell the hapless one? One of the larger of the idols stuck to his palm and wouldn't detach for anything. The priest tugged at it desperately, but all in vain. His rage reached its peak. Then the magician said to him, "If you leave me alone to do my work, then neither will my objects be of any trouble to you." The Roman Catholic priest promised him that he would not concern himself with the magician's work again. Thus, at the command of the sorcerer, the idols were loosed from his hands. The priest, from shame and resentment, departed back to his homeland in Belgium with the first available flight. So that's an example of what happens when you don't have prayer or proper prayer. So absolutely, the spiritual environment around you when you pray is affected. And this is consistent with everything we know. Even in divine liturgy and in the temple, when you go to a parish that people pray, you can tell the difference. Everyone is benefited, including the priest. When you're in a place where nobody's praying or very few people are praying or people even talking a lot, not just because it's annoying, but because spiritually it's a drain on you. When you're in the presence of a saintly man who's praying, you feel the difference. So the more we pray, the more we help people around us, the more we help the environment spiritually, let's say, where demons are not going to have the same power when men are praying. And so when people were praying for that magician in Athens, he wasn't able to do his magical work. When people were not praying or couldn't pray or their prayers were ineffective, they were hampered by the demons. So absolutely, your question is a good one, and it's true. Of course, people don't have to be affected personally. They don't have to receive the grace of God that might be coming in more abundance around people who pray. People are free not to accept that, of course, right? But does it affect them? Yes. The presence of prayer affects everybody if they want to be affected internally. That's another question, how they transform it or translate it to their own personal life.